Today was a day called Purim Katan, literally translated Small Purim, the 14th of Adar Rishon, of the first Adar. Had this year been an ordinary year with just one Adar in our calendar, then today would have been Purim and we probably would not be here this evening for various reasons that you could all conclude yourself. But Purim Katan aside, which we won't discuss tonight, the significance of Purim Katan, which does have significance, but our sages teach us that 30 days before any Chag, before any holiday, we're supposed to begin to think, to contemplate, to gear up for the upcoming holiday. So being that it's 30 days before the Purim Gadol, before the regular Purim, in 30 days from now, that means 2 months before Pesach for anybody who's counting. Then it's a time to reflect, to learn, to explore about the upcoming Chag. Earlier this week, I had an opportunity to go back to the yeshiva that I attended post high school, as a post high school student many years ago, for a reunion. Not the reunion that many of you probably are familiar with. But this wasn't an ordinary reunion, a high school reunion or a college reunion. This reunion was quite different. This was a reunion where people sat around a table, across from each other, next to each other, and were learning Torah from the beginning of the day, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6:30 in the afternoon, in the evening, with a short break for lunch in between. Delicious catered lunch at that. It wasn't about reminiscing about the memories of old days, about the practical jokes played on teachers, or the good teachers, the bad ones, about the good memories, the bad ones. This was called what's called a Yarche Kala, which is a day-long study session. And this took place this past Sunday. So imagine a room, probably, 3-4 times the size of this room, packed with people who are not from the area where the yeshiva's in. Some took planes, some flew in from other parts of the country. Some actually flew in from Toronto. The first fellow who I met there said, and I felt a little bit bad speaking to him because I was taking off myself from my morning job, but with the permission of my principal, of course. But the first fellow who I met said that he never, ever, ever takes off from teaching. He's a Rabbi, he's a teacher in New Jersey, in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a high school teacher, and he never, ever misses, except for this. With the encouragement of his menal, of his principal, to come to get encouragement, to get chizuk, to be inspired, and to sit and learn the entire day without interruption. And he said he wouldn't miss it for the world. And that's his only break that he ever gets. That's his only vacation, so to speak, that he ever takes. And one of my Rabbeim, his name is Rav Shalom Spitz, one of the Rosh Yeshiva in the yeshiva, he said something which is appropriate for this time of year in our preparation for Purim. He said the following. He said that we know in the Purim story in the Megillah, Haman approached Achashverosh with a offer that he was hoping Achashverosh wouldn't refuse, and of course we know he didn't. He said that there's a nation that's mefuzar and mefora, that's spread out, and our sages tell us that he meant not just they're spread out geographically, but they're spread out in their convictions. They're spread out and not a cohesive unit. This group and that group, and this group of Jews and that group of Jews, each one with their way of thinking and their way of life, and there's so much that divides them and they don't get along, and we could battle them and we could destroy them, we could kill them. And Achashverosh took the bait, and Achashverosh said, "You're right, and we're going to destroy them." And that was the edict, that was the decree that they made to kill the Jews, men, women, and children on one day. And when ultimately God saved us from that evil decree, so Mordechai and Esther, our great saviors who were the emissaries, the messengers of God to save us, they realized that the way that we have to correct that mistake that Haman, who was right about. Haman said that we're too divided, that we have to come together. That's one of the reasons why Esther said, Lech kenosis kol Yehudim, that we have to gather all the Jews together. We have to bring them all together to pray. We have to bring all the Jews together as one unit. So Mordechai and Esther realized that that's not enough. It's not enough just to have a one-time, lightning, a bolt of lightning to get everyone to come together to save the Jewish people. It has to remain that way. It has to continue year after year. We have to write this down. We have to memorialize it and etch it in our history, that this is what unites the Jewish people. This is what saves the Jewish people from tragedy. To come together as one, to focus on what unites us and not what divides us. And the Jews of that time were so inspired. They were so unbelievably taken and so unbelievably moved by this miracle of Hashem to save them at that time, that our sages tell us that they reaffirmed, so to speak, they reaffirmed their vows to the Torah. They reaffirmed their connection, their promise, their accepting of the Torah. Hadar kiblu b'me'ach hashveirosh, they accepted the Torah once again. And my Rabbi said that it's not by coincidence, because these two components, these two elements that were such a big part of that time, of the focus on the cohesiveness of the Jewish people, and the reaffirmation of the Torah, the reaffirming of the Torah at that time, that is how the Jews stick together. There's no greater unifier of the Jewish people than the Torah. And they felt that there's no greater present to give back to Hashem, to give back to God for saving them from this terrible decree, than to once again reaffirm their connection, their dedication to the Torah. That's why they reaffirmed that cohesiveness with the accepting of the Torah. And my Rebbe said that that's the idea of coming together. The room was filled with students of the yeshiva that spanned probably 30 years. 30 years time. From my time, from boys who had, not boys anymore, but students who I've never seen before, whether they were 10 or 15 years older than me, or 10 or 15 years younger than me. The only thing that we had in common was that we were sitting around a table and learning the same piece, the same section of Gemara for a few hours straight. And the fact that we went to the same yeshiva and had the same Rabbeim. So there's no greater unifier than that of the Torah. That's the message that I think we could take in, and as we prepare for this upcoming Yontiv, to remember that there's so much more that unites us than divides us. We come together on Tuesday nights at not the greatest time, a time that's hard for us to get out of the house, but as it hit me, and as I remember that the email that goes out every Tuesday, which reminds us, and that's exactly what we just spoke about in the last few minutes, what the few words of the email tell us in a few short words. An hour of peer-to-peer Torah learning. That's what it is. It's an hour of not learning one to himself or one to herself. It's peer-to-peer learning, because that's what unites us. And it's learning Torah, because that's the greatest unifier. And the second greatest unifier, delicious lunch. Have a good evening.